amazing conversation. Jaana is going to bring like a whole other perspective to the day, from science to system to people, to all her learnings from just all the experience. She was ex-Spotify OG as well, so the heart and soul of Agile, the OG of Agile, as we've called it. So without further ado, Jaana.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now that's the one. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna try this one out. Let's see if it comes up. Moment of silence. Yeah, well, I'll take the opportunity then to acknowledge. I had a good chat with where are you sitting? Standing? No. Anyway, about it's been an interesting and very inspiring day. And I was thinking about, having almost the last talk today and thinking, okay, I'm not going to swear. It's not my native language. I don't do that, but we'll see. Anyway, and thinking, I need to acknowledge what she said and what he said and what they pointed out. And now I'm like, and then I just had to stop thinking how I would change my talk now here, wrapping up almost today. So I'll just say that thank you everyone for all the contributions and the energizing and talks that you have given today. I think you will recognize a lot in my presentation actually. So maybe please bear with me. Is this, no? Wrong? Yeah, other way around. So, what is uncertainty? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle has been one of the most praised theories of quantum physics. And quantum physics is a rabbit hole. So let's not go there. Oh, that was a very small. Interesting. I guess it changed. I'm sorry. Maybe there will be, I emailed my presentation, so I hopefully you will see what's on the slides. Anyway, so I will make a humble attempt at trying to simplify this concept of uncertainty to the best of my understanding with no maths involved whatsoever. Yeah, I think it has, you will just have to go with some of the changes that have happened to this presentation. So, uncertainty. It's something unknown, unpredictable, and where you cannot foresee the outcomes. So too much uncertainty, obviously, is not desirable. But it also provides the freedom to creative decisions. So, freedom is great and obviously something that we all want. But before we unleash freedom, it could be worthwhile considering entropy. So entropy is the level of disorder in a closed but changing system. Okay, I'm gonna go slow now. Energy flows only in one direction, from ordered to disordered state. So, we'll see if I can make any sense out of this uncertainty aspect at the end of this presentation. So, in daily life, entropy manifests in sort of chaos, even in the office, or in the organization, or in the team, or wherever you are, even at home. Probably you have some examples of that as well. When no effort is made to keep things in order. So no order means often misalignment. And with that, in entropy language, wasted energy, or in more daily speaking, WIP overflow, wasted work, and so forth. So do we want to stay in that? Or do we want to move here? So how do you juggle uncertainty? With 3 key mechanisms: purpose, mastery, autonomy. And in practice, what this means, because this is top level, in practice, and this is where I'm going to dig into, how do you do that? We talk about here clear, sort of creating the why, the meaning. Here, we talk about learning loops. And here we talk about empowering people. So what makes organizations productive in uncertainty? Winners. I would say alignment. We have heard about this earlier today as well. So to guide ourselves through this presentation today, I have turned purpose, mastery, and autonomy into an operational model, an operating systems, basically describing a selection of core components that I think are fundamental for companies to deal with uncertainty at scale. So we will get into them. But here we will see that we are talking about purpose, clear priorities, direction, context, and driven by data. Here we will talk about autonomy, the ways, sort of the organizational structures enabling that. And on the bottom level, these components reflect things that will enable mastery. Starting with purpose. Missions in uncertainty. You need to start with setting your destination. Set your North Star goal. That means define a compelling vision that will guide you and your organization, your teams. So it's a North Star goal. You can think of it as sailors do. Helping them, it's a compass, helping them to stay on track no matter where they are. And a North Star goal is obviously very aspirational. It's long-term. It's something that motivates and inspires the organization. So, an example, one of the most compelling North Star goals that I have seen is the one given by SpaceX. I'll give you a moment to read through that. because there are some components inherent here. It describes what we do, how we do it, for whom we do it, but also why. It gives meaning and purpose and a clear direction. So it's quite tricky to come up with it. It requires some work because it's obviously something that should be stable over a longer term. So the recommendation is definitely not to rush through the work of coming up with your North Star goal. However, there are plenty of templates out there, so I would highly recommend you to find them. And even in terms of how you would compose them. So you have your North Star goal, you have your mission, you have your purpose and the why. What is required to substantially move you towards that North Star? Your company bets or your organizational big bets. Your strategic moves. And they need to be visualized and communicated to the organization. So how do you do that? How do you describe your bets? And how do you come up with them? Well, obviously you have a North Star goal to start it. But here's an example. Using a Kanban board, because you obviously cannot do all of them at once. We have already talked about Agile and the principles of that. You need to focus and to bring that energy and direction to one thing. So in the now column, what you put there is already what you have experimented on. You know here with reasonable confidence that you will make it. Sorry, wrong column. You also have the funding. You have the resources needed. And most importantly, the team ready to do the job. So then you're looking at it here. In next, you have identified an opportunity and you're experimenting with it in different ways to learn what would be the best way to realize it, basically. In the later column, you believe that there is an opportunity. You don't know. So you're investigating, right? And some aspects to think about here is obviously what it would cost, what would be the required investment. So not only to investigate whether that would be a true opportunity, but also what it would cost to realize it. So that's a way of prioritizing. We have another prioritization rule here also. So you have a stack rank here. What if you could only do one of these? Which one would you do? That needs to be put first. So, very clear priorities, right? Gives focus and it gives a clear direction and what is prioritized right now for everyone. High level, strategic. But more importantly, all that prioritization is meaningless if you don't visualize it. I mean, if it stays with the top management team or the executive team or whomever leading team, it doesn't help the organization. It must be visualized. So find any way you can, analog or digital, to communicate it and make it accessible and visible. Because that is crucial. Oh, wow. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, in doing that, it will generate new bet boards on different levels and different dimensions of your company. Remember I said what is crucial to uncertainty? Alignment. So there will be a traceability, and obviously, most importantly, you will need to find a rhythm to follow up. Again, very disciplined, to know that whatever is done at different levels is on track. And whether something must be changed. We have learned something that actually has an impact on the strategic level. See if I'm taking this the right way. Okay, so you just don't come up with strategic bets. They come from somewhere, right? And here we come into data-driven decision making. So here's an example of how to sort of frame your argumentation in a structured way based on data to decide whether something you want to do is what should be done or not. Yeah, sorry again. Anyway, so you have data, and this you collect from different sources depending on what you're thinking about doing. You build your insights based on that data. In addition, you need to also reach out and think about what is the market or the external environment saying about this thingy that we want to do, and what is your belief about that opportunity. And then you're more ready to argue for your case and make a bet. So this example, actually, it's a real example. It's some time ago, coming from a production company, wanting to move from commodity computing to a new platform. And this meant that we had to look inside our own organization. Are we equipped to do this leap? So looking at our legacy tech base, our architecture, looking at how we are staffed, do we even have the skills to do this? Well, we were optimized for the wrong thing. We were optimized for sort of the previous technology, right? That's where we had our expertise. But also other things like how our culture plays out. So, okay, cool. We have our context, we have our purpose, we have our priorities very clear. We have our direction. So, how do we get there in the best possible way in uncertainty? Because the roadmap might still be open, right? Which it often is. Experiment away. So now we're walking into ways of working. And this is really, we are at the core of Agile here, because Agile is really what addresses uncertainty with its values, principles, and practices and techniques. So what I highly recommend here is also to look at how do we actually work, and how can we embrace uncertainty in the ways we work. So here you can get inspiration, obviously, for all the different Agile methodologies. And me coming from tech, I have my heart in extreme programming, the best model ever for working iteratively in small steps, building in continuous feedback and being very disciplined also about that feedback to tweak whatever we need in terms of the learnings that we do get from that. That works very well in small teams. The question now, how do we do that at scale? And here is my answer. Yay! There are some models for that as well. So lean startup, for instance, is one to look at. So we don't want to stay in this loop, right? We want to scale, we want to productify, we want to implement, we want to embed whatever it is that comes out from this iterative loop here in this specific team or group. So that might not always be as easy. And looking at different setups of companies, we have heard siloed. We have talked about, very, command and control oriented ways of working. So those structures are obviously intimidating, maybe. But in that, you really need to think about, if you move into this, how do we scale this and how do we ensure that the value chain of this work benefits the whole organization? And you need to think about that upfront to some extent. I mean, obviously with Agile, you can start doing things as we talked about even in the panel this morning. Very important to do and try, and always keep trying and experimenting. But if you want to scale, it must be thought about how do you enable the value of work from one unit to the next, and how do you refine that outcome into value that becomes an asset and revenue, obviously, at the last row. So now you have clear priorities. Well, you have your North Stars, you have clear priorities, you have the rationale for why those are your priorities, because you have made them based on data-driven decision-making. You also have now, with ways of working, a way to work with them operationally on a daily basis. How do you structure work, but more importantly, your organization and the people in it, in a way that enables continuous alignment? Are you familiar with Simon Wardley? Wardley mapping and his model for 3 types of innovation. It's also an organizational guide to look at how do we organize ourselves across the company or the organization to be as productive as possible. You have pioneers and you have settlers, and you have town planners and settlers. So PST. So what he describes is definitely, he describes the conditions under which each of these sort of personality types thrive. And how he also maps the ways of working, the methods, the processes that are most applicable to that type of work. So pioneers, they deal with rare things. Sometimes, things that don't even exist. So they work definitely in uncertainty. They are happy with failure, experimentation, but also uncertainty. And here you can see that Agile is definitely a good way of organizing the work in there. Yeah. And then you have the settlers who grow the innovations coming out from this work. They are, working constantly with improvement. And here you can see models such as lean to be more, smooth in the way, not as experimental as in this way. Then you have the town planners who work with the very common stuff, the established things, maintenance, basically. So it's very standardized, it's very stable, not much change, and you just tweak the product or the solution or the service. And here Six Sigma would be an appropriate model, sort of an improvement framework. So the idea is here to look at your organization and identify those individuals and organize them in that way, but also looking at what type of work are we actually doing here. So highly recommend to look into his framework. Very, very useful. Now, zooming into the teams specifically, dynamic teams. We have said it already today. Bring in the people, the expertise required when required. That's not super easy, obviously, also because of the structures you might be working in. But that is imperative if you don't want to waste time on, speculating or energy in that sense. So I'm going to move on really quickly now. Finally, we have tools. And this is also about, the infrastructure, bottom line that you have in order to create a productive environment where the people can be, work both in smart, fast, and collaborative ways. You have cloud, but I will also stress automation as much as possible to liberate time for people to do the analytical work, the creative work. So that is something to consider as well. You need to find your Swiss Army knife in providing the right tools for your organization to be productive. And then all of what I have said would be meaningless if you don't fundamentally also look at transparency. Ensure that there is transparency. I mean, if you have clear priorities and they are not communicated, well, then they can be very clear to a very special group of people. But for the rest, yeah, you get the point. But it's also key to alignment. So, wrapping up quickly. Now, what I went through are some core components, not exhaustive in any way. Obviously, also you heard a great many other dimensions to being productive in uncertainty today. But I would say that at least from my experience, these are fundamental, primarily because they enable alignment, but they also help you know where you spend your energy. And that is also coming back to entropy, to spotting that by alignment. Alignment. So finally, now looking at things from a larger perspective, uncertainty is everywhere. Software is eating the world across all sectors. In this paradigm shift that we are in which is happening right now, right here, the winners are those who embrace uncertainty, and also, to some extent, think about how to organize themselves in smart ways to become resilient in that. So, and never forget to keep doing this over and over again. That would be my actually one piece of advice, if you would select one from what I have talked about today. Thank you.